What if I told you there's someone in your life right now who's been secretly cataloging your emotions, predicting your decisions, and mentally rehearsing conversations with you before they even happen? Sounds creepy, right? Well, it's not what you think. Picture this. You're having coffee with a friend, and they suddenly say, "You seem stressed about something you haven't told me yet." Or maybe someone finishes your thoughts so accurately it's almost unsettling. These aren't mind readers or psychics. They're highly intelligent INFJs, and they're walking around with mental superpowers that most people don't even know exist. Here's what'll blow your mind. INFJs make up less than 2% of the population. But when you combine that rare wiring with high intelligence, you get individuals with some of the most fascinating and bizarre habits you've ever heard of. I'm talking about people who create entire mental movies before walking into a room, who can emotional time travel back to feelings from years ago, and who maintain secret psychological profiles of everyone they meet. Today, we're pulling back the curtain on the secret mental world of highly intelligent INFJs. Once you see how their minds really work, you'll never look at human behavior the same way again. Ready to have your mind blown? Let's dive in. 1. They create elaborate mental movies before every social interaction. Here's something that'll make you do a double take. Highly intelligent INFJs don't just show up to social events. They literally rehearse them in their heads first. I'm talking full-blown mental movies, complete with dialogue, possible scenarios, and backup plans for when things go sideways. Picture this. Before walking into a coffee shop to meet a friend, an intelligent INFJ has already played out 17 different conversation starters, predicted 3 potential awkward moments, and mentally prepared responses for topics ranging from the weather to existential philosophy. They're like directors of their own social screenplay, except the movie's playing in their head before the actual scene even begins. This isn't just overthinking, it's strategic preparation. These folks have learned that their intuitive nature picks up on so many subtle cues that they need to mentally organize all that information beforehand. It's like having a supercomputer that needs to run diagnostics before every social interaction. What makes this habit even stranger is how accurate their mental rehearsals often turn out to be. They'll predict that Sarah will mention her job troubles, that Mark will make that specific joke he always makes, and that someone will inevitably bring up politics. And you know what? They're usually right. 2. They have secret emotional filing systems. Now here's where things get really weird. Highly intelligent INFJs don't just feel emotions, they categorize, analyze, and file them away like they're running some kind of internal emotional library. They've got mental folders for everything. Disappointment from 2019, that weird guilt feeling, and unresolved anxiety about things that might never happen. This emotional filing system isn't random chaos, though. It's incredibly organized. They can access specific emotional memories with frightening accuracy. Ask them about how they felt during a particular conversation 3 months ago, and they'll not only remember the emotion but also the exact shade of that feeling, what triggered it, and how it connected to 7 other seemingly unrelated experiences. But here's the kicker. They don't just file their own emotions. They're also cataloging everyone else's. They remember how their coworker looked slightly deflated last Tuesday, how their friend's voice changed when discussing their relationship, and how their mom's laugh sounded different during that phone call last week. This emotional data collection might seem overwhelming, but for highly intelligent INFJs, it's their way of understanding the world. They're constantly building this massive emotional database that helps them navigate relationships and predict human behavior with uncanny accuracy. 3. They engage in microsolitude sessions throughout the day. While most people think of alone time as something you do at the end of the day, highly intelligent INFJs have mastered the art of microsolitude. They're stealing tiny moments of mental solitude even when they're surrounded by people. You might catch them staring out a window for exactly 30 seconds during a meeting, taking an unnecessarily long route to the bathroom, or suddenly becoming very interested in organizing their desk. These aren't signs of boredom or rudeness. They're strategic mental recharge breaks. These micro-sessions are like hitting the reset button on their mental state. INFJs process so much information and emotion throughout the day that their brains need these little pauses to prevent complete overwhelm. It's like their mind is saying, "Hold up, we need to process all this stuff before we take in any more." What's particularly strange is how seamlessly they integrate these moments into their daily routine. They've become masters at finding solitude in crowded spaces, mental privacy in open offices, and peaceful moments in chaotic environments. It's almost like they have an internal GPS that guides them to these pocket-sized sanctuaries throughout the day. 4. They practice conversation archaeology. Here's a habit that sounds like it belongs in a detective novel. Highly intelligent INFJs don't just have conversations, they excavate them. They dig deep into every interaction, analyzing not just what was said, but what wasn't said, how it was said, and what it all means in the bigger picture. After a conversation ends, they're not done with it. Not by a long shot. They'll replay it multiple times, examining tone of voice, body language, word choice, and timing. They're looking for hidden meanings, unspoken emotions, and underlying motivations. It's like they're archaeologists, but instead of digging up ancient artifacts, they're unearthing the buried truths in human communication. This habit extends beyond just analyzing their own conversations. They're also excavating interactions they've observed between others. They'll notice that brief pause before someone answered a question, the way someone's eyes shifted when a particular topic came up, or how the energy in the room changed when certain people started talking. What makes this even more fascinating is their ability to connect these conversational findings to patterns they've observed over time. They're not just analyzing individual conversations in isolation. They're building comprehensive psychological profiles of the people in their lives based on accumulated conversational data. 5. They create invisible emotional boundaries that shift like tectonic plates. Most people have emotional boundaries that are pretty straightforward. You're either in the inner circle or you're not. But highly intelligent INFJs, their emotional boundaries are like complex geological formations that shift and move based on a million different factors. These boundaries aren't just about trust or closeness. They're intricate systems that take into account the other person's emotional state, the current situation, their own energy levels, the time of day, recent experiences, and probably the phase of the moon. What's even stranger is that these boundaries can shift dramatically within a single conversation. One moment, they might be sharing deep personal insights with someone, and the next moment, they've subtly retreated behind an invisible wall. It's not that they're being fake or manipulative. They're just incredibly sensitive to emotional dynamics and adjust their boundaries accordingly. This habit can be confusing for the people in their lives who don't understand why the INFJ was so open yesterday but seems distant today. What they don't realize is that the INFJ is constantly calibrating their emotional accessibility based on what they're sensing in the environment and the other person. 6. They collect human behavioral patterns like other people collect stamps. Here's where the intelligence part really shows up. Highly intelligent INFJs are pattern recognition machines when it comes to human behavior. They're constantly collecting and cataloging behavioral patterns, not just for fun, but because they genuinely find human behavior fascinating and want to understand it better. They'll notice that their friend always touches their hair when they're nervous, that their coworker speaks faster when they're excited about something, or that their partner always cleans when they're processing difficult emotions. But it doesn't stop there. They're also tracking bigger patterns across different relationships and situations. This pattern collection helps them become incredibly skilled at predicting behavior and understanding motivations. They can often tell when someone's about to quit their job, end a relationship, or make a major life change, sometimes before the person themselves has fully recognized it. What's particularly strange about this habit is how they use this information. It's not for manipulation or control. It's for understanding and connection. They want to be able to support the people they care about better, anticipate needs, and create more meaningful relationships. 7. They engage in philosophical debates with themselves. While most people might have an occasional internal monologue, highly intelligent INFJs are hosting full-blown philosophical symposiums in their heads. They're not just thinking about what to have for lunch. They're debating the nature of existence, questioning societal norms, and exploring complex ethical dilemmas. These internal debates aren't quick thoughts that flash by. They're extensive, nuanced discussions where they argue multiple sides of complex issues. They'll spend an entire commute debating whether free will truly exists, whether there's an objective moral truth, or what it really means to live an authentic life. What makes this habit even more interesting is that they often reach conclusions that surprise even themselves. They'll start these internal debates thinking they believe one thing, only to discover through their own arguments that they actually believe something completely different. These philosophical wrestling matches also help them develop incredibly nuanced perspectives on complex issues. While other people might have simple opinions, INFJs often have multi-layered viewpoints that account for various contexts, exceptions, and gray areas. 8. They practice emotional time travel. Here's a habit that sounds like science fiction but is actually a daily reality for highly intelligent INFJs. They don't just remember past emotions. They can actually re-experience them with startling clarity. It's like they have an emotional time machine that lets them revisit feelings from years ago, as if they were happening right now. This isn't just nostalgia or memory. It's full emotional recall. They can access the exact feeling of disappointment from a failed project 5 years ago, the specific joy of a childhood Christmas morning, or the precise anxiety they felt before a big presentation. These aren't faded memories. They're vivid emotional experiences that feel completely present. But here's where it gets even stranger. They also engage in emotional forecasting. They can imagine future scenarios so vividly that they actually experience the emotions they would feel in those situations. They're not just thinking about potential outcomes, they're emotionally living them. This emotional time travel ability helps them learn from past experiences and prepare for future challenges. But it can also be overwhelming. They're not just dealing with present emotions, they're processing past and future feelings simultaneously. 9. They have elaborate mental relationship maps. Forget family trees. Highly intelligent INFJs create comprehensive mental maps of all the relationships in their environment. These aren't just simple diagrams of who knows whom. They're complex psychological landscapes that track emotional connections, influence patterns, communication styles, conflict histories, and power dynamics. These mental maps include not just direct relationships but also the relationships between people they know. They understand how Sarah's friendship with Mike affects her relationship with Jenny, how office politics influence team dynamics, or how family history shapes current interactions. What's particularly fascinating is how they use these maps to navigate social situations. They can predict potential conflicts, identify opportunities for connection, and understand why certain people react to each other in specific ways. It's like they have a GPS system for human relationships. These relationship maps are constantly being updated based on new information and observations. They're not static diagrams. They're living, breathing representations of the complex social networks that surround them. 10. They engage in strategic vulnerability. Most people are either open or closed, trusting or guarded. But highly intelligent INFJs have developed something much more sophisticated: strategic vulnerability. They've learned exactly how much to share, with whom, and when to create meaningful connections without overwhelming themselves or others. This isn't manipulation, it's emotional intelligence in action. They understand that vulnerability is the key to deep relationships, but they also know that too much vulnerability too quickly can be counterproductive. So they've developed a sophisticated approach to opening up that takes into account the other person's capacity for intimacy, their own emotional reserves, and the specific context of the relationship. They might share a personal story that reveals something meaningful about themselves while also testing how the other person responds to vulnerability. They're simultaneously being authentic and gathering information about the relationship's potential depth. This strategic approach to vulnerability helps them build incredibly strong relationships while protecting their own emotional well-being. They're not walls or completely open books. They're complex individuals who understand the nuanced art of human connection. 11. They create emotional weather forecasts. Just like meteorologists predict weather patterns, highly intelligent INFJs develop the ability to forecast emotional climates. They can sense when tension is building in a relationship, when someone's heading toward a breakdown, or when a group dynamic is about to shift dramatically. This emotional forecasting isn't based on obvious signs, it's built on their ability to detect subtle changes in energy, communication patterns, and behavioral cues. They might notice that someone's texting pattern has changed, that a friend's laugh sounds slightly different, or that the atmosphere in the office feels a bit off. What's remarkable is how accurate these forecasts often are. They'll predict that a coworker is about to quit, that a friend's relationship is in trouble, or that family drama is brewing, often weeks before these situations become obvious to everyone else. This forecasting ability helps them prepare for emotional challenges and offer support when people need it most. But it can also be exhausting, as they're constantly monitoring and predicting emotional weather patterns in their environment. 12. They maintain secret appreciation archives. Here's a habit that reveals the beautiful side of the INFJ mind. Highly intelligent INFJs keep detailed mental archives of all the small, beautiful moments they experience with the people they care about. These aren't just happy memories. They're carefully curated collections of meaningful moments that they revisit when they need to remember why relationships matter. These archives include things like the way someone's eyes light up when they talk about their passion, the specific way a friend laughs at their jokes, or the gentle way someone says their name. They remember not just what happened, but how it felt, what it meant, and why it was special. What makes this habit particularly touching is that they often remember these moments better than the people who shared them. They're like living museums of human connection, preserving the small moments that make relationships meaningful. These appreciation archives serve as emotional anchors during difficult times. When they're struggling with social anxiety or feeling disconnected from others, they can revisit these carefully preserved moments of connection and remember why human relationships are worth the effort. The science behind these strange habits. Now, you might be wondering why highly intelligent INFJs develop these particular habits. The answer lies in how their brains are wired. INFJs have dominant introverted intuition, which means they're constantly processing patterns, possibilities, and connections that others might miss. When you combine this intuitive processing with high intelligence, you get individuals who are incredibly sophisticated at understanding human behavior and emotional dynamics. Their brains are constantly working to make sense of the complex social and emotional information they're picking up from their environment. These habits aren't random quirks. They're adaptive strategies that help highly intelligent INFJs navigate a world that often feels overwhelming and complex. They've learned to create systems and approaches that help them manage their sensitivity while maximizing their ability to understand and connect with others. Why these habits matter. Understanding these habits is important for several reasons. First, if you're an INFJ yourself, recognizing these patterns can help you understand that you're not weird or broken, you're just wired differently. These habits are actually signs of sophisticated emotional and social intelligence. Second, if you have INFJs in your life, understanding these habits can help you appreciate the complexity of how they experience the world. What might seem like overthinking or strange behavior is actually their way of processing and making sense of their environment. Finally, these habits reveal something beautiful about the human capacity for understanding and connection. INFJs, particularly highly intelligent ones, remind us that there are people in the world who are dedicating enormous mental energy to understanding, appreciating, and connecting with others. Living with these habits. For INFJs who recognize these habits in themselves, it's important to remember that while these patterns can be incredibly useful, they can also be exhausting. It's okay to take breaks from analyzing, forecasting, and processing. It's okay to sometimes just exist without constantly trying to understand everything. It's also important to remember that not everyone processes the world this way, and that's okay too. Your way of understanding and connecting isn't the only way, and learning to appreciate different approaches to life and relationships can be incredibly enriching. For the people who love INFJs, understanding these habits can help you appreciate the incredible effort and energy that goes into how they experience the world. When an INFJ seems distant or overwhelmed, they might be processing massive amounts of social and emotional information. When they seem to understand you better than you understand yourself, it's because they've been carefully observing and analyzing patterns in your behavior and emotions. Conclusion: the habits of highly intelligent INFJs reveal a fascinating approach to understanding and navigating the human experience. From their elaborate mental rehearsals to their emotional time travel, from their pattern recognition to their strategic vulnerability, these individuals have developed sophisticated ways of processing and connecting with the world around them. These habits might seem strange to those who don't share them, but they represent a beautiful dedication to understanding, appreciating, and connecting with others. In a world that often feels disconnected and superficial, Highly intelligent INFJs remind us of the depth and complexity that's possible in human relationships and understanding. Whether you're an INFJ yourself or someone who wants to better understand the INFJs in your life, recognizing and appreciating these habits can lead to deeper, more meaningful connections. After all, in a world full of surface-level interactions, isn't it wonderful to know that there are people out there dedicating so much mental energy to truly understanding and appreciating the complexity of being human? So the next time you encounter someone who seems to understand you a little too well, who appears to be overthinking social situations, or who seems to have an uncanny ability to predict human behavior, you might just be in the presence of a highly intelligent INFJ. And now you know, those strange habits aren't so strange after all. They're just evidence of a beautifully complex mind working to make sense of an even more complex world. Remember to hit that like button if this resonated with you. Subscribe for more content about personality types and human behavior, and let me know in the comments which of these habits you found most surprising or relatable. Until next time, keep exploring the fascinating world of human psychology.